Hey,
Hello.
morning, Richard. Can you hear me?
Yep. Yeah.
Sorry, I'm a bit overdressed this morning. I've got to go into Principal's Collections at 10 o'clock. That's
Yes, you said. I was thinking you were looking very elegant.
we just don't do it. You put a tie and you think this feels so strange. I wonder if the pandemic will see the death of the tie.
That wouldn't be an entirely bad thing, would it?
It wouldn't. A benefit, yeah. Hi, Glenn.
Morning.
Right, so brilliant. Well, thanks for having a go. I can see changes have been made. I've just dropped some late breaking stuff in. We've now got this extraordinary version control mechanism, which we just keep adding initials on to the end of the
Yeah. We might want to actually just accept all the changes at some point.
I think we might just do that today and then start again. Yeah, I think we'll be doing that, some version of that.
Yeah, I only got about halfway through with my changes, unfortunately.
That's all right. No, that's great. Thank you. And I appreciate everybody's under the cosh. Just kind of imagining an Easter break of some description. I don't know quite what it'll be like. Do you just want to talk me through what you've been doing? I'm looking at a version. Actually, I thought I'd put the last version in, and then Valerie beat me to it with another version, I think. In fact, there's 3 more gone in since. That's amazing.
Yeah, I think I've made some.
Brilliant. That's okay. At some point, we'll just. I think there's only one integration point that's problematic. There may be Valerie maybe put something in and didn't. Anyway, whatever. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Oh no, actually. Yeah, because we'll get there. NRS.
Then Marion's conflicted copy.
Yeah.
Two versions of your conflicted copy. That's right.
Okay. Anyway, we'll agree on a version control mechanism. I think actually it'll be make sure we don't lose any in the stuff that's been committed today is the main thing, and then consolidate and see where we are. As I say, I've got to bail out at 10, and but I was hoping we could meet next week 10:30 as per normal. That's what I'm assuming, and then we can have a real crack at trying to get this into shape. So, Richard, what had you been doing? Just to review.
Well, to be honest, I was mostly just reading through it. I mean, I think the bit that I'll be adding the most to, I haven't actually got to yet, where there's a specific mention of the our data pipeline. But I was trying to kind of set the situation up a bit by adding in some comments about things that I thought were missing. In particular, kind of information on kind of human and machine readable information on failures of data sets. So the kind of issue tracking that we're doing, which I think is quite important. And also the fact that we have that it was already mentioned in the manuscript that that there are repositories like Google's where they integrate lots of data sets, but we don't actually know, there are scripts somewhere, but no, I don't think anybody actually knows how they were all integrated and how that was all done. And so if somebody's using the kind of Google data sets and somebody else is using a different one, then are they the same data sets? I mean, we don't even know if they're the same data sets, I think, any longer, because it gets so confusing. And so some mechanism of inspecting those to work out where they came from, so that the provenance tracking goes back further.
That was my problem actually. As you try and just do effectively a data review of what's out there, it's very hard to know what that lineage is or what the process is. That's quite an important point. Okay, that's really good. So you're setting that up to discuss that a bit more. Yeah. Glenn?
So I set out with the intention of having a sort of run through of 8.2 and 8.3. I have done 8.3. I've tried to make it a bit more
in the style of the rest of it.
Well, I'm not sure whether I've succeeded in that, but I've at least tried to make it clearer what it's kind of offering in terms of new perspectives, I think. And then I started looking at 8.2, and there's quite a bit of stuff there, and I kind of think it needs a bit of
a go over. It's suddenly become bigger, hasn't it?
I'm happy to
a bit of reintegration, probably. Rationalization. I mean, I think that's exactly right.
Yeah, I didn't try to change the structure of it very much at all, but I mean that might be a good idea. But I thought that might be a bit much for a first go through.
Yeah. I think before we do that, we need to just agree a process so that we're not all trampling over each other. I think that's right. I mean, I think we've got I think we've got a lot of material here, and I think the perfect shouldn't be the enemy of the good. At some point, we should just try and make it consistent and coherent and see what we've got, and that'll be a draft one, really. We're missing a couple of bits. I put a piece in data institutions, which is more would be nice to have them in the future. It's quite interesting to reflect on the fact that people are talking about, these a lot. And of course, effectively, since a lot of the data has been coming out of government agencies or statutory bodies like ONS, you can't really, they are almost acting as data institutions in their own way. The trouble is that within the three NHSs, I mean, it's already complex beyond belief to know where you get your data. And it's quite surprising when you do talk to the modelers just how, they use quite publicly available, quite questionable data, in fact, and just hope it'll all come out in the wash. I mean, I thought Lorenzo discussing the issue around the hospitalization data was really interesting. I hadn't realized that it was a major driver for one class of models, and so hi, Ben. Hi. So I think that there's an interesting issue about whether a thing like this, in the way that Ian McHenry was talking, requires, an institutional effort to say, well, why isn't there at least one body who's trying to convene infectious diseases data more broadly? Or is that just another thing you set up that ends up not being fleet of foot enough, particularly in this age of lots and lots of data, ancillary data sources? But in the EPIC program, did they think about data provisioning as a key capability? Do they have a separate data institution within EPIC? Is that the concept they have, or?
Well, not as Ian can probably speak to this better than I can, but I mean, there's a part of EPIC which tries to collate existing data. I mean, EPIC itself doesn't collect data.
Yeah.
And that in itself is pretty problematic, because
and I think that's the issue, isn't it? I mean, and I don't know how I think you can just open up the issues in this paper and say, look, data institutions are one response. I mean, for things like Biobank, it's been quite useful to have an organization whose mission is X and it's stewarded in a particular sort of way, if you can get access to it. But that's the point, isn't it? I mean, on the other hand, you've got Google making all this stuff really publicly available. Yeah.
But I think one of the critical things about EPIC from the outside is that although, it's been collating data, which is actually one of the things that we're saying is a good thing, but, rather than generating its own, but also it's really been thinking about how we should take this forward. So when we started working on it, we basically had their kind of background of this is what Ian and all of the rest have been thinking about for ages, about what they would do if anyone ever gave them any money to do it. And so we've been able to take advantage of that.
Yeah.
One thing that I wanted to say was that when I was reading through it, and also a discussion I had with Glenn yesterday, was that one thing that's become very obvious is that working inside the safe havens, we don't know the relationship between the raw data and the data we get. Because we get curated data products from them, which are going to be different for everybody who accesses them. And so we don't actually, so although we're not suggesting for a second there's anything wrong with those data products. If somebody else asked for essentially the same data, they'd get something different that wouldn't be traceable as the same thing.
Actually, that's a really good point. Actually, that's is there a note in the manuscript to that effect anywhere?
No, I'm going to add that in.
Because that's a really good point. I mean, that's interesting, isn't it? So they're almost operating like a human version of Open Safely. It's kind of like that you submit your request to us, we'll give you a data set and get on with it. Yeah.
And I mean that was why we were asking for funding to take this inside the ONS safe haven, so we could take our pipeline inside the ONS safe haven, so we could see the extent to which it was actually possible to move that back up the chain. So that, because if ultimately, we still don't have access to the raw data, although, SPI-M probably do, and Halo does, as far as I understand. But if if we can get traction from the administrators of the safe havens so that they use these processes to provide us with our data sets, then that closes that loop.
That'd be really important to bring out. I think that piece of architecture, I mean, not people outside, lots of people don't know about the safe haven model, particularly, you know, who are outside the your context. And the point you make about the ONS variant, that's already quite interesting, because they could end up being quite an important stakeholder in all of this if we can empower them. And then they need the processors, don't they, to kind of ship this stuff out. Yeah. Oh, that'd be a great addition if you could. Yeah.
Yeah, sure. That's my next plan.
I guess one thing I was going to say was, as well as the kind of data institutions kind of thing, I wonder whether in the discussion we should perhaps be calling for sort of, you know, some kind of standards. I mean, maybe taking the FAIR kind of approach, but expanding it and thinking more specifically about what that means for, you know, what interoperability, for example, means for pandemic modeling, because there are some specific things that are coming out of you know, section 8.2 and COVID, where we kind of know that if only they'd, you know, people had collected something alongside the data that they are providing, it would be a lot more useful.
Yeah, that's a great point. Actually, I think what that speaks to is that we need at the end to try and crisp it up with some recommendations. I think that would make it more powerful. Yeah. As
one thing we've been really lucky with in terms of timing and availability of tools is that it seems like we've only really started engaging with this recently, since this STFC grant of ours started, but the research object consortium, do you know these guys, Nigel?
I know of them.
So they got together with the data crate people and created research object crates, and they're only about 15 months old, this concept, and the version 1.1 came out last month, but it's a really easy way of packaging the information about model inputs, model outputs, and code runs and stuff like that. So we're thinking, well, we're talking to them next week about kind of wholesale adoption of that framework into our data pipeline. And I think that encouraging these kind of standards, and so people like I mean, I know this is completely different context, but now we started talking to them and discovered that, for instance, all European museums are now in a massive Horizon 2020 bid of 105 museums that's been funded and led by the Natural History Museum in London to adopt these for all of their records, for all of their online records of everything in every museum in Europe, for instance. So there's going to be a massive adoption of this kind of stuff going forward.
Cultural heritage has always been a really interesting early adopter of some of these ideas, and I think we know this is ROR, isn't it?
No, ROR is the institutional kind of ORCID thing. RO Crate is the thing I'm talking about, which is. I mean, I'll add stuff.
It's not related at all. It's a separate thing. Okay.
Completely different, I think.
Where did this come from then?
Okay. But yeah, ROR is the kind of ORCID.
That's the identifier consortium, isn't it? Yeah. Which actually provides some of the identifiers into things like cultural heritage. Actually.
No, I mean, I think that a lot of these things we can just fit into the narrative and say we need to be. You know, we have these standards now. They're widely adopted. Things like ORCID, obviously, very widely adopted now. But you know, there are more and more of them, and we've been kind of going through them one by one, kind of discarding a lot of them. And so far, this RO Crate approach seems to be. So the old research objects were a complete nightmare. They were just some ludicrously over complex concept, and data crates were basically a zip file. And then they got together and said, okay, we can come to a compromise here and have useful information, but not so complicated that nobody can use it.
Oh, okay, this is great. It is interesting, isn't it, how all this stuff is just coming together right now. I mean, the research object. Oh, there we are. Okay. Yeah. Be great. Well, if you can, and I'll dig into that. That'd be great.
No, absolutely. I mean, we're talking to the lead developer of the research object consortium, or whatever it is, next week. So
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah. Oh, it's Jason. Yeah. Okay. So it's all it's quite linked data, isn't it? Once upon a time. Yeah. Cool. Well, Jason LD anyway.
Yeah. So Stien something or other is the guy.
Stien Soylent Race. Yeah. I'm looking at the, yeah. See, yeah.
The guy we're talking to.
Cool. Excellent. Well, that's good. Yeah. So I guess one of the things that we face is just some basic sanity around version control now, and whether what the best way of getting some, I mean, almost at the point where it wouldn't do huge violence to the document to take all the changes in, reissue a clean version, and then just kind of give ourselves reading over that and just make individual kind of commentary variants or whatever. What do you think the best way to take it forward is, since we're not using anything sensible that does proper version control?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, I think we absolutely it's totally meaningless. The edits that we have at the moment are totally meaningless because every single word in the entire document is a track change.
Yeah.
So it just,
no, it's just it's hopeless. Yeah.
So I think that once the changes that you and Valerie have made are rationalized, and Glenn perhaps as well, then I think we just accept all the changes and move on from there.
Okay, let's do that. Agree to do that. And then in taking it forward, some bits are still to be really, if we believe it's still the fact that we need a future surveillance section. Well, I think we do, and I think it'd be quite heavily informed by the kind of work you're doing now, you guys, but also, what would a global surveillance capability? I mean, I think we probably would want to take some of that in, but we haven't really expanded that out. I'm hoping that Ian will contribute. I mean, he's contributed some good thinking up to this point, whether he'll have a chance to go over the document. As you say, 8.2 has become a bit sprawling now. It's got a lot of good stuff in it. It's a matter of perhaps rationalizing it back down. What other observations as you read through it? The modeling section you guys are looking at, I mean, it's I think there, if we can just insert, I don't know whether the trouble is, this is an academic paper, and as such, they're academic references, even though the real proof point is, are people using any of this stuff rather than writing papers on it? I don't know. Do you think there's a reasonably viable paper in here? Do we think, just to kind of?
My impression is
Okay.
Yeah, it's still got a bit of work to do, but yeah.
Because occasionally you just kind of think, oh, it's just.
I know.
This is difficult.
Yeah. On that note, I'm not quite sure what's happened to Min. He did say he was coming today, but the visualization guys are now started working on the manuscript. I don't know whether they've spoken to you or Valerie or whatever, they're painfully democratic. So the voting process went on for considerably longer than I was expecting.
Oh, what are they doing? What have they decided to do?
Well, to write a visualization challenges chapter.
They are going to. Okay.
Yeah,
I see.
So, they started working on that last week.
Okay.
The end of last week. Based on the paper they already have.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah, makes sense.
What's that?
I was saying based on the full paper they already have.
Right, so they're writing one of these exposition papers rather than.
Well, I think they're still arguing as they write about exactly what the paper, I think they're very keen on, some of them are very keen on writing a proper challenges paper, because they can see, from what they've already done, they can see quite a few very obvious challenges, and they'd like to get them down on paper. But yeah, we'll see given the time frame. What they come up with, because they obviously already have a more reflective.
Well, it's quite a good paper in and of itself, but I mean, to pitch it into this format, that would require some work. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Oh well, that's good. So that I think the visualization side of it should be represented. It's good that we've got that kind of perspective in the collection. Then, in that case, I'm just looking at.
Yeah, I mean, just pragmatically, having seen, that it's already the 11th, and how tight is this end of March deadline for them?
I think we'll get a bit of leeway on that. I mean, I'm hoping I can really make some time available for myself over Easter. So it's, that's already, into early April, frankly. Yeah. But we haven't had them staring at us with that steely kind of glinty-eyed, you've got to deliver by yet. We want to get it reviewed by some people as well. I mean, my view is there a chance of doing, if we consolidate the variants that have been produced today, the conflicted copies and the one from Valerie and my latest one and your stuff, if we consolidate that and accept the changes essentially, and then I'll reissue that, perhaps with a bit more guidance about what we're looking for people to do. Yeah. I mean, I know what you're doing, Richard and Ben and Glenn. I mean, that's great. So I don't know, but practically, can we really take this to the next stage with the next iteration, do you think? I mean, we're still missing one or two chunks, it has to be said, but I'm not sure they're chunks that we couldn't put together with a little bit of reasonably intelligent reading ourselves. I don't know, for example, now we've got the stuff from the modelers and the estimators. I don't think that there are big disconnects between us and that. What I don't know is what people are thinking or saying about future surveillance capability, and whether we've got enough to say as is and we shouldn't worry about it too much.
Yeah, I mean, I think that my feeling would be that we do have a lot to say already, and that it's a slightly different issue. I mean, maybe it all fits into one. I mean, it's all data related, but improving how we handle data and actually collecting more data, kind of, I don't know, in my head they're kind of slightly distinct, but yeah, I don't feel strongly about it.
Yeah, I think that we're bound to have elements of both of those in it, just because it's been interesting to notice some gaps in provision and the difficulty of absorbing new classes of, I hate the term, but I'll use happenstance for now, happenstance data, exhaust data, whatever you want to call it. That is already challenging. And it's been interesting in that sense that the official high quality protected patient data, that is being dealt with, I think, perhaps more effectively than we might have imagined. It is this other ancillary stuff that you can put on top that's been the challenge. I think the question that struck me with Lorenzo's presentation was how he just decided that there was no point in relying on any kind of estimation from contact tracing or the test and trace program at all. So he just kind of went to hospitalization, and lo and behold, that seemed to be a good assumption. I guess the one thing I don't know, and I'm not sure you'd have a view on it, I don't know what to think about it, is we don't say much about data sets like test and trace or the testing regimes, which have much in the news at the moment, massive amounts of money spent against them for lots of tests, the use and quality, which I'm just not sure. Should we say something about that massive class of data? But I can't, I just don't know. React seems to be used, but the other contact tracing data, I'm just not sure that it's actually used by anybody.
Yeah, I mean, I think for me, this comes back to use of data versus new sources of data. And I'd be concerned that if we wrote a paper that had a lot on improving what we do so that next time we have all the processes in place and it all works right, and a bit on the fact that the test and trace data was shit and we ought to be surveilling people more, then the whole paper will be sold as, some total surveillance system or something.
Yeah. No, I get that. No, I don't want to say that. I mean, it's just striking to me. Yeah.
I did add a little bit about test data.
Oh, great. Sorry.
No, I mean, it's just a tiny bit, but I mean, I think what I'm wondering is whether, instead of having this 8.8, the sort of foresight and surveillance, we just make that the discussion, and we sort of call upon, we highlight the fact that, there needs to be more links between people who use data and who collect data and who curate data.
Yeah, that's a good suggestion. Yeah.
And I do think that things that needs to be identified, and I don't think we can necessarily do it in this paper because we don't have the right range of skills or the time. But I think one thing that could be identified are a sort of series of guidelines which would help people, for example, when they develop the test program. I think they should really be thinking, okay, what else could this be used for? What could the data that this program generates be used for?
Yeah.
And, one of the things that me and Richard heard someone speaking yesterday, he was saying, I'm trying to get a reference for this, but was saying that, for example, the negative test results from the Pillar 2 testing data aren't passed to Scotland, for example.
Oh, right.
So they don't appear in the data that we've got access to. We don't quite know why yet, but this is a kind of rumor that they've just not been included. And it seems to me that that's a critical bit of information that clearly should be. I mean, it's quite a simple.
Yeah.
But there's other things that could be potentially routinely collected when you do testing to make that data more valuable. And I think that general lesson applies not just to test data, but also possibly to the test.
Yeah, so rather than saying, here's what a perfect surveillance system looks like, these are the obvious recommendations that come out of our work to make our exploitation of this crucial set of assets better. Yeah.
And also for people when they're collecting data to think about a series of, a bit like I said, a bit like the FAIR idea, what sort of things should a good data collection system have and think about. And so we can't anticipate every problem, but we can try and anticipate the sorts of questions that they should ask.
Yeah, I think talked a bit about metadata and things as well in the estimation paper about the fact that we can't really estimate observation processes if you don't have the information available on how the data was collected and potential biases that could have been introduced, which I guess kind of follows on from that.
Right. Okay. I'm just, since it's only the four of us, do you think the other lot was starting later and they've just forgotten we were starting at 9:30?
Maybe, although Valerie did send a.
Yeah, it was
an email. Yeah,
saying it was starting at 9:30. So
yeah, she did send an email, so that's right. Okay, yeah, I've literally got to bail out in a minute. What I will do then is perhaps just.
Do you want me to spend like half an hour now just reconciling those four latest versions so that you can tidy the thing up?
Yes.
You can have a look at the top version.
That would be perfect. I'm going to say that would be one thing that would just save a bit of time, because I think the main thing I did, by the way, in my section is just an addition of half a page on data institutions, really, to fill that out. And I'm not sure. I mean, we'll look at that and see whether it fits, because again, it's more. Actually, safe havens are an interesting example of that, and I should remember to reflect on that. So if you could try and. Actually, ideally, if you could just stay on this call in case anybody else piles in and just do that reconciliation for half an hour, would that be possible?
Yeah, happy to do that.
That'll be, and then we're not going to miss anybody out. And no, I think it's going to come together nicely. If we kind of keep this notion of what are the recommendations, what have we learned, what are the guidelines? I mean, we can't enumerate everything, but at least we can. And what does good look like? I mean, when did you come across this? I'm looking at the RO crate JSON LD spec. It's quite interesting. When did you come across?
I mean, it came out of UKAEA. So they've started investigating it for their Fusion data pipelines.
Oh, I see. Right.
So Sean DeWitt, who's the head of data engineering or something at UKAEA, I'm not quite sure. Anyway, he was suggesting it. I mean, it is literally 1.0 came out December 2019, so it's totally.
Nice. Yeah. And Carol Goebel's there as well. Okay, I got to go. Okay, all right. Take care. Cheers.
Thanks.
See you next week, 10:30.
Yeah,
okay, thanks a lot. Cheers.
Bye.
If you can reconcile and just include. Yep. Okay. A new version. I'll take all the changes in. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. All right. Cheers. Thanks.
Thanks.
Hi, sorry, Alex. I was just finishing my Zoom call.
You're still on our call.
I am. I better leave.
Okay. Oh, that's weird. I didn't realize you could carry on recording when you weren't actually there.
Yeah, it's automatically set up with this link. As soon as anyone logs in, it automatically starts recording until everyone's left.
Right.
Right, okay.
Okay. So you can't say anything too rude.
Do you need anything from me, Glenn? At all?
I think so. I mean, I don't think it's going to be a big job. I'm hoping it's.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I was just thinking from the point of view of the papers that we're all involved in, whether, well, I was feeling like we should add in a specific affiliation for SCRC as well as our own. I mean, not that SCRC really.
Yeah, because I guess some of the experiences are broader than just our own.
Yeah.
Personal. Yeah, yeah. I agree.
Having kind of SCRC on several of the papers, I think would be.
Yeah, no, that's a good point.
Sensible thing to do.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not quite sure what to do at this point. I mean, I'm happy to come back to this afternoon once you've reconciled the changes, Glenn. And
okay. I guess we might probably just wait till Nigel has sent another version out.
Well, no, but you're going to do the edits, and then he's going to send another version out, isn't he?
Yeah. Yeah.
Hello, Valerie.
Hi, Valerie.
Well, I'm so sorry. Were we meant to meet at 9:30?
Yeah.
Yeah, Nigel had to leave.
I could easily have done, and I just forgot. Sorry.
No problem.
No.
Have we got anywhere? Has Nigel been and gone? Or
Yeah, he had to go, unfortunately.
so
Yeah, so Glenn's reconciling. So there's a version which has my edits, and then Glenn's, yours, and Nigel's in. And so Glenn's going to reconcile those because they're slightly conflicting versions at the moment.
okay, I've probably made matters worse because what I was doing for the last half hour or so was putting a few extra things in. So there's a version which should be there, which has got my initials right at the end.
Yeah, there's another version which has Nigel's initials right at the end, though, unfortunately.
Oh dear, yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, I mean,
it was just a few comments that I put in, so I don't think it's a big deal. I mean, the main thing I thought was that it doesn't quite hang together at the moment, in the sense that we've got a lot which I think it sort of stands back, and then we've got some very detailed modelling things, which possibly fit better in either the modelling or the estimations sections, and also those bits are very sort of UK focused.
Yeah, I thought that as well.
And I don't know whether I mean, it's really, really difficult, but where possible, if one can pick out what the generality first and use the UK as an example, rather than sort of driving everything from what happened in the UK, that would be better. But I don't know how feasible that is. But I did feel it was quite uneven at the moment. But I mean, that's inevitable.
I mean, I think there are a few more things to add in, and then reconciliation will probably be much easier once we've. I mean, so what we discussed with Nigel at 9:30 was that Glenn was going to reconcile the versions, then Nigel was going to go through and accept all the changes, because at the moment every single word is a track change from one person or another. So
Yeah, I was just looking at the simple version with all that taken out, because I couldn't cope with the complicated version. But I mean, when it's all together, it will be much easier. I was really only reading the first few sections, and I mean, there's lots of really good stuff there.
Yeah, no, I absolutely. I mean, it definitely needs to be consistentified or something.
Yeah. I mean, I guess one section that hasn't got much in it at the moment is the data skills.
Hang on.
8.7.
Yeah, I just haven't got that far through the manuscript yet.
Right.
But obviously that's something that Ian has lots of.
Yeah, well, I was kind of wondering whether it is possible to write it from a sort of Ian's perspective and maybe your analysis perspective in terms of RSEs.
Yeah.
I think this is where I was a little bit confused about the scope of the different chapters and how that fits together, because there's a whole lot of overlapping skills, you know. So yeah, I think Ian's was squarely the data skills, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And the data roles. And there's maybe a little bit I can add about the sort of data engineering, if you see what I mean, where it overlaps with software engineering. But there's also the modeling one, and if there's potentially going to be a visualization one, you know, there's kind of a lot of different, you could do skills under any of those things, couldn't you? Or
Yeah, I think it would be better. I mean, I don't know about the visualization side, but I think that it will be better to focus the discussion on skills into one paper if possible, because if it's diffused, then
I think the modeling paper, for example, I don't know what the visualization paper is, but the modeling paper is not focused on skills at all.
Is the modeling one much more conceptual, you know, about the modeling, scientific approaches to the modeling, not the implementation?
Yeah, exactly. So I mean, there obviously are lots of the other chapters are focused on more implementation and sort of how you do things, but I'm not sure any. Valerie can correct me maybe, but I'm not sure any of them are really taking a sort of skills type perspective. So I think this is probably the paper to do that.
Yeah. No, I have no feeling bad. I haven't sent my input yet, so that might be if I was to do something like take Ian's notes and some of my own thoughts and do
I think that would be really
a draft in there. That would be a concrete.
Yeah, I think that'd be
really I should do, wouldn't it? Yeah.
Okay. I think the only bit that touches on skills really is in I don't know, maybe the policy paper. There's a little bit about need to expand you know, awareness of modeling and so on.
And then you could just cross-reference, couldn't you? If
exactly
skills was there, you could say there's a policy aspect here where we need to consider.
And maybe in this section or for the discussion of this paper, we might want to talk about, you know, I guess there's a danger of it being quite disciplinary. I guess what we found is that you need to sort of, all these different groups need to talk to each other and understand each other, and that's maybe a key message as well from the section.
That's something I'm quite used to banging on about. So if I have a go, and it will probably be something that's a bit rambling and a bit too long, and then we can decide what out of that is
that sounds
useful points we want to make, maybe.
So what was where are we at with the next week in terms of what?
I think Nigel was planning to sort of like reissue a clean version.
Okay. Once he's taken out all the changes and things.
About maybe assigning sort of different, like asking people to do different things.
Yeah. I mean, I can just carry on from where I left off in 8.3 and just keep on going, because I only got to page 8 or whatever that was. I can't remember any longer. With my edits, and there's quite a bit of stuff. There's even some stuff specifically on our data pipeline in 8.5 or something, I can't remember, that I definitely need to add in. So I've got a substantial amount of work to do next week.
Yeah. I think one of the nice things about this paper is that it covers a lot of areas that are actually quite separate from anything that's going on. I mean, a lot of the papers sort of overlap with, because, you know, data and modeling and estimation all fit together. But there's a lot here which is not, and it's very clearly in the remit of this area, rather than, it's not modeling per se, it's about curation and availability and all those things. Well, one thing I did wonder, because we had a discussion yesterday on policy, have we got anonymization and linkage in here anywhere? Does that, is linkage of different?
I think probably it loosely mentions it. I don't think there's anything specific in detail. There's talk about privacy and issues with accessing data privately, but
Because
again,
one of the Graham Medley looked at the policy paper, and one of his comments there, we just picked on something I think that mentioned anonymization and said that linkage was really important, and I wasn't sure quite where that fitted up, but maybe there's something about that whole area in here, or could
I think there's something that we've come to appreciate with our work I mean, one thing that was very obvious when we were setting up our consortium was how reluctant people were to get involved with the data and how enthusiastic they were to get involved with the modeling. Because the data processing is treated as a very much a second-class citizen. And I think that actually it's considerably more important than the modeling, not just because without it, the modeling doesn't exist, but also because so much can be done just with the data anyway. And so an emphasis on the fact that actually this early stage data wrangling is actually the critical stage in all of this. And part of that is being able to do linkage, but part of it is just cleaning up the data and correctly annotating it and correctly, all of this stuff that Ian has these 18 jobs for. We found about 2 people who are willing to do any of those 18 jobs in practice, because everyone's like, oh no, but I want to help with the modeling because that's cool. And I think that we need to bring out the fact that the data is important, and it's pervasive in academia. Unfortunately, there's very little credit given in the ref and whatever for creating data, even though it's much more work often than the modeling that I do. I think that we need to find places to insert the kind of primacy of data into the, given it's the data chapter.
Yeah, although I remember there was a statement, right, let's see if I can find it way back at the beginning, which says every facet of the understanding we are seeking is underpinned by data. And I would take issue with that. So I might like to insert the word, almost every facet or something, because models can give you a lot of understanding in the complete absence of any data whatsoever.
And I also think the reason people's reluctance to work with data is also partly linked to the fact that it's bloody hard to get hold of.
No, I mean, I don't think that was it though, because we were talking about wrangling the open data sources and stuff like that. It wasn't just the data that we were struggling to get hold of, it was the public data as well. And even the people we did, persuade were always kind of, well, can't I do some modeling as well?
Well, it's no real, I mean, I've worked a lot with hydrologists and so on, modeling hydrological processes, spatial temporal stuff. And there's always huge problems with the data. It's mainly radar data or whatever. And it needs a lot of processing before it's even fit to use in the modeling. But of course, there's no brownie points for doing that sort of work in academia.
Yeah, well, exactly, yeah.
And so it's very hard to get that sort of aspect.
I think that is a good point to make, like as a sort of an overview of like every step in this process is worthy of the same level of respect and is a genuine contribution to the scientific understanding, and it's not grunt work that anybody could do and that kind of thing. We got to work towards it having equal respect if we want it done well.
Yeah. I mean, we wrote a paper a few years ago on flu, where we were building some fancy new model that was obviously fantastic of kind of vaccine matching for flu, but as part of that, we cleaned up, annotated and curated the entire history of all flu work that was done in the World Reference Laboratory in the Worldwide Influenza Center for H1N1. But we got no credit for doing that, even though it's possibly the most valuable flu resource in the world. But we got no credit for doing that, although, but we got credit for some paper that now is out of date and somebody else has replaced and whatever. But I mean, it's just wrong, and I think we need to make that point.
I did wonder actually whether part of what you might say here is that there are some aspects of this problem which might benefit from some kind of targeted funding. So, actually saying that making data sets usable and available and well curated could be could be something that could be funded.
Yeah, but not just could be funded, although that is very important, but also should get into processes like the REF. We just,
But I suspect if funding was available, it would very rapidly find its way into the REF. So.
But that is like there are people really heavily working on this, aren't there? I know someone I work with a lot, Simon Hetrick from the SSI, is running something called the Hidden REF, which is like an alternative REF, and it's a sort of publicity thing really, and a campaigning thing to get recognition for people who've contributed to science in all these different ways, apart from papers, basically. So data sets or software or,
Yeah, I mean, software is the same, but it's software you can at least submit now.
Yeah, although he's done stats on, how many people in fact do versus how much funding goes into it and this kind of thing. But yeah, so that we might be able to find something to refer to where someone's making that case and an entire,
I mean, I would say that the same kind of applies. There's a similar element in statistics as well, where people do lots of statistical work, which is essential to the paper, but they get relatively little credit.
Yeah. And they talk about it, people who are like instrumentation experts as well, this kind of thing on big experiments, they have very much the same lack of recognition where they're instrumental to the results kind of thing.
Yeah. Anyway.
Yeah.
I think some of these points are in those bullet points at the top, aren't they, in fact?
Yes, I've just seen scientific recognition of data collection and data cleaning. I have to admit that I kind of skimmed over those bullet points.
So it just seems like you probably agree that's a sentence or two that needs writing or something. Yeah.
Yes, actually, I skimmed over the whole of the introduction now I think about it.
And it could come back in this skills bit, couldn't it? As in, you need the skills, but you also need the motivation for people to focus on that if there's not the recognition for it.
Yeah. Yeah, no, definitely. Yeah.
Sort of always in my mind goes with documenting software and that sort of thing. That if you're doing a research project, the sort of thing we were doing, you wrote the programs, but providing them, making them accessible to people in the Environment Agency, for example, in a form that they could use when they're totally unfamiliar with using anything else, was always something that there wasn't really any. It was hard to find the time and the money to do that sort of thing, because it's very time consuming.
That's a big part of the case we make for like why you need dedicated RSE roles, because if it's all written by people with who are being measured against like traditional academic metrics, they can't spend the time on it, and
exactly
take their focus away from what they are supposed to be trying to achieve.
Yeah. And it's really time consuming, like the data cleaning.
And they're often sort of smart enough to know how it should be done well, but they're not able to give it that focus to, so they don't like it either, frankly,
Yeah. So anyway, to come back to the start, I think that the kind of skills and role stuff, I think having a focus in this paper on that will be really good, rather than trying to wedge a kind of RSE discussion into the modeling thing or something.
Yeah.
Modeling paper or something like that.
Is this what's already there in that skills section? It says there's some things taken from Ian's notes. Is that?
I think that was
more extensive notes from Ian.
That was literally, I can send you Ian's notes. I think.
Yeah.
I think probably me cutting, pasting something before Ian sort of was able to join it.
If I have a go at that section, it'd be good if I have everything Ian sent.
Yeah, I'll maybe send an email to you and copy Ian in as well.
Yeah. and I'll offer to have a pass over it and then let him know to have another look, that kind of thing. Yeah.
Probably makes sense to do. Probably makes sense to do it as a separate file called 8.7.
Right. Yeah. Then I don't have to navigate them which version
Yeah, exactly.
to start editing from, which would be quite nice. Okay.
Yeah.
I wonder if, well, let's write some text, but then we can decide if data skills is the right heading when we see what it is. Yeah.
I think all these things are probably up for grabs.
I'm afraid I'm going to have to make a move, but do shout if there's anything this week I need to work on, I guess. So,
what's the situation with the estimation chapter?
So I've made a lot of edits on that and comments during the week, and I've put it together into a single document now. I think there's various bit. Yeah, I think Lorenzo put some stuff in last night that I haven't looked at yet. But I think there's some work still needs to be done, but it's getting there.
Cool.
That's one for today's efforts, I think, to try and read that one.
Yeah, I think there's a couple of sections that need a bit more focus from the challenges. I think 7.2 is a lot of description of UQ rather than focusing on what the challenges remaining are. We did talk a bit about that last week, but and we need a discussion section as well.
Sounds good.
There.
Okay, see you later then.
Yep, see you later.
Right, thanks, Ben.
Okay.
I might go as well and just tidy this up before.
Yeah, I'm thinking it might be useful for me to just spend the rest of this hour just writing some words in that new document.
Well, many apologies again for being so incompetent with the diary. But, anyway, so next week, are we back to 10 o'clock?
I think we're back to 10:30. That's what night.
Oh, okay, right.
Yeah.
Okay. So
is it half an hour at 10:30 is going to be the regular?
Well, I think the issue was that some people could only make it 10:30, some people could only make it 10 to 11. So we said we'd start at 10:30 so that we didn't have the common time half 1 hour in.
yes.
You know, so we start at 10:30 and then some people can stay till 11:30.
Okay.
But not everybody.
Okay, I'll make sure my diary.
Right, but that's going to be regular. But today we're
stopping.
We're not expecting anyone else to join at 10:30, basically.
No, because today it was 9:30 till 10:30 because Nigel was meeting every single student in the whole of his college.
That's right.
Oh, sorry, I did not. I missed the 9:30 thing.
No,
Yeah.
Me too. Okay, sorry again. Thank you.
later.
So see you at 10:30 next week.
10:30.
Bye.
Bye then.